Hi, everyone. It's very interesting. This is the first lecture in 3 years, physically. All the lectures have been going online. And one of the differences online, we start on the dot, but physically we have to allow people to move between different lecture theaters. So it's interesting. My name is Fethi and Nick. We are going to be in charge of the third year software engineering workshops. Luckily, your third year, a lot of the concept of the workshops are known, but there are many changes we have introduced. So in this first lecture, I want to set the scene and tell you about what we plan to do. Some of it is familiar, some of it might be. First thing is, what is the theme of the workshop? The theme is that software is a very complex, developing software has become a very complex activity. And the workshop has been traditionally about enabling software development using teams of students. And it's interesting is we think we get it, and then what we do in third year becomes such an obvious thing. It's not new, so we have to make it a bit more advanced and more advanced and more advanced. So we're always racing with new techniques and development to try make the workshops relevant to the existing practices. And I think in this case, what is it that makes software complex? We all know that we interact with, in the old days, you had one PC, one interface. Now you interact with software using a variety of devices, tablets, mobile, desktops. Software is no longer contained in one machine. It uses different servers, databases. The data is not keyboard and mouse anymore. There's lots of sensors, devices. So really, this new situation makes the software of today, the simple software of today, probably 10 years ago would have been impossible to do within these workshops. It's just too hard and requires some skills that would be 5, 6, 7 years of experience before you can acquire them. But now they have become possible. Yeah, so the speed of changes is extremely changing. And again, when I used to teach that, I used to say to students, you must use this language, this technology. Now it changes so fast that we tend to tell the students, go and find out about technologies, libraries. So we are less and less prescriptive about how you should do your implementation, and more we rely on you to go and find out about what is happening, simply because the pace of changes is very rapid. In particular, cloud computing has had a lot of changes in the way software is built, delivered, how people collaborate with each other, and so on. So there are many models, architectural models, that fit these architectural developments. And I think for us, keeping pace with these changes, we have to constantly revise these workshops. And we have seen that you go into thin client and fat client, and then back to thin clients, and then so these are just examples of changes in the way software is being built, and constantly people like you have to adapt to these changes. But one thing for sure is that more and more the act of building software is no longer something you do on your own. It's a collective experience, doing it in teams. And also there is this reliance on open source, open data, and the act, if you are working in an enterprise, not just using enterprise resources, but using any resource you can get your hands on throughout the world. Of course, I just thought there is interesting to look at all these different cloud models. So I included a video for you to watch in your spare time about software as a service, infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, because these are all part of the new environment that we have to deal with. But the trends is going more and more making software development an automated facility, an automated activity. And you've seen all this talk about ChatGPT. You can ask ChatGPT, how do I write this in Python? And it gives you the answer. So a lot of people are asking the question, what would programmers be used for? We still believe programmers have to go one step ahead of the game, in that you have to be in control of the automation, you have to be in control of the process, you have to be in control of the design, the architecture. So it's less and less about solving small problems, writing code, and it's more about building systems. And again, this is a very important shift that you as software engineers have to be aware of and have to adapt to it and make use of it, exploit it. So there is no a monoculture approach, interoperability, how to get bits of and pieces from different systems and making them work together is key, rather than building single components. It's more about assembling components that has become the main activity. And there's no reliance on one technology. You have to kind of know your way through different technologies, open source. And in this course, we want to focus on one particular way of doing things, which is microservice architectures. So in the second hour, we're going to talk a little bit about what we mean by microservice architectures, but some of you already know this concept from the previous workshop. So what are we doing in this workshop? It's the same as previous workshops. We want you to learn how to work in teams, because that's very important for industry. So workshops in general prepare you for industry, and these are only available to software engineers. So we always use that as, if somebody says, what is the difference between computer science and software engineering? We say software engineers do workshops, the others don't. So they have that ability to work as teams, their ability to not just be good at technology, but also good at taking requirements from users and try to engineer a system that responds to some user requirements. So it is not just about technology, it's about communication with some degrees of freedom. We don't ask you to, like in an assignment, to do A, B, C, but to actually build a system with some degree of, you have some degree of flexibility to incorporate some ideas, do something differently if you wish to do that. This particular workshop really is about implementation, testing. So I think this workshop is so complex that I don't think there is one member of staff that understands everything. So I understand more of the problem. When it comes to technology, I'm a little bit lost. Nick understands perhaps more the technology, maybe the problem a bit less. So as a team, we are kind of a bit similar to a company. In a company, you'd have different people who know different things, and it's not possible to find somebody who knows everything. So in these workshops, you're going to have a mentor. The mentor will provide you some degree of help, but then in some cases, we will have other people, technical experts, that will have expertise in particular areas. So you may have to be referred to different people if you need to answer your specific question. And that's how we structured it. We also want you to learn a new domain because that's very important for a software engineer to be solving problems for other application people, and that involves immersing yourself in a domain. We also going to do the same as with the second year, is that what you build as a software, you can integrate it with other teams' software. And again, this is important because, as I explained at the beginning, complex software is made by teams, and teams have to somehow build pieces that ultimately need to connect at the end. But there is an emphasis of making you leaders with that thinking ability. And again, you're competing with ChatGPT, so you have to have that thing that makes you better at innovating, thinking outside of the box, and not giving standard answers and standard code, but always think about being able to do more than that. So the focus of the workshop, in the previous workshop, we started introducing this idea that pieces of software could have their own APIs. But what we have done is we built APIs that you deploy and people can use. So it was a bit like helping you to create APIs that are public, but also for you to be able to leverage public APIs. But this workshop is a little bit more trying to simulate all of you being part of one company and trying to build one product using DevOps, testing, data integration tools, principles. So you try to work together. And when I think of it, if you look at any startup company, they would have, I don't know, 10 programmers, 15 programmers. And this class is 150 programmers. So we are actually, should be able to do more than any startup, given the number of people that we have here available. So again, it's a challenge that we have taken upon ourselves to see how much of common development effort we could do by using a class working together. And that's also in response to, we conducted the review with industry, and industry was criticizing us by saying, yeah, you always build toy programs. You don't know what it's like to build a complicated, complex software prototype. And we thought, okay, let's try and see, will we be able to do that within a teaching context? So obviously it will be a little bit real and a little bit experimental. So that's what we will be trying to do in this workshop. So the way we do, like before, you will be divided into groups and you will be assigned a mentor. We will invite different industry people to talk about different topics that we think will be sometimes directly connected to the project, or sometimes indirectly connected. So we always think giving you as much industry exposure is beneficial to you because it helps you being prepared for future careers in industry. For the first time in 3 years, the mentoring is going to be face-to-face. So that's, again, going to be important for you to develop these communication skills. The timetable might change because we are talking to industry to arrange talks. Sometimes we do that at the last minute. Sometimes there are changes, people are not available. So always watch the website to know exactly when there isn't a lecture. And again, the focus will be more on group work, mentoring. The lectures are additional information we feed you to help you. And I always say, if there is a topic we should talk to you about, and we haven't, let us know, because we can always say, okay, in week 5 or 6, we will have a top. We can't do week 6, sorry. Week 5 or 7, we can do a lecture on this particular topic. Because we have many people in industry who tell us, what do you want us to give you talks about? So we give you talks about what we think you would like to know. But again, if you think we haven't said enough about a particular topic, feel free to make suggestions. So the learning outcome for this talk is really this idea of working in an agile way. That was the case already in the second year workshops, but this time we're making it more agile plus DevOps. So really we're going to the next step in trying to approximate methods that are currently used in the software industry. This idea of designing API as a microservice is a little bit more tricky than designing an API for public consumption. So I think it will be a very important learning outcome in this course. And having different teams doing different microservices, and these microservices will be integrated ultimately in an application is also another important learning outcome from this workshop. So this is completely new. We organized in 3 sprints. So the first sprint is we have an ecosystem of microservices, and each team has to contribute a microservice. Now, because you're the first time we're doing this, the ecosystem is empty. So you actually have to start populating it with microservices. In the next years, they will find some and they could add to what we have, but pretty much in your batch, you're going to be creating some microservices to evolve the ecosystem. But these microservices have to be able to work in the context of the application. So there's some effort to validate and deploy them. So that's going to be the sprint 2. And the sprint 3 is going to build the application on top of the microservices. So this will involve multiple microservices. So really a little bit similar to what we have done in the second year. You build something and then you build something else on top of it, which may involve things done by other students. And portfolio will be your individual assessment part. And the sprint 1, 2, 3 will be a group assessment part. So the first 2 weeks is really to give you as much information as possible. So today we're giving you lectures, and we have to form groups. Unfortunately, in the past, we used to do 1 lecture, we form groups, and then we do another lecture. I think now it's a bit more, you could have 2 lectures and then have a group, or you can have the groups in between. So we haven't been able to have that sequence done properly, but it doesn't matter. At the end of week 1, we want everybody to be in a team. And if you're not, we have the team, the master team maker who's going to sort you out. In week 2, you should start doing your mentoring. The teams should start talking to each other, talking to their mentors, getting ready to do the work. We will give you a bit more lectures to kind of onboard you. But basically, this course is at the beginning, dumping as much information on you and then letting you just work on your project. So really, from that point, it's lectures, and then you deliver different sprints. Apologies, I think week 4 is sprint 1, not sprint 4. And then you have sprint 2 and then sprint 3. Sorry, I messed it up. So basically, you have the 3 sprints and you have the mentoring in between. And then on the week starting 15th of May, we will select some teams to give a presentation to Optiva, who are the sponsor of this course. And we have Greg at the back from Optiva, who's going to talk at the end of this lecture about just Optiva's role as a sponsor. The assessment method is always the most controversial part of these workshops, because People like to have criteria, and I'm getting 1 point here, 1 point there. And I always have to repeat that these are workshops that kind of replicate what happens in industry. And you can't really go to your manager and say, give me all the criteria that I have to do my work. You just have to do the work. So we tend to be qualitative. We tend to look at your work, maybe sometimes comparison to each other, or this group has done more than this one. We also rely a lot on the mentors to give fair assessments on the progress of the teams. We rely on mentors at the beginning because the weights are small, but as we get to larger components, we may have other people as assessors. So this way, we try to be marking as fairly as possible. But I always say the most important thing from this course is that you get some learning outcomes, you get some experience, and you learn something that you can impress employers with. Because I don't think there are many courses that will teach you how to do DevOps in a team environment. Marks may or may not reflect the effort that you've put in. Yeah, could be a limitation that we fully acknowledge that we have. So project activities, again, all of you are part of an ecosystem. And when I say ecosystem, it could be a company, it could be an open source project. So you are somehow together, having a common purpose. And then to make the project simple, we say the goal of the company is to collect data from different sources. And then the first sprint is to create microservice to import a source of data. The second sprint is to deploy it and to test it. And the third one is to build a web application. So again, what are these sources and what are we exactly doing? I'm going to talk about next. So I'm going to give you the details, but we are using same as with software engineering too. We're using Confluence to manage all the specs. So everything I'm going to talk about will be on Confluence. And you can, as in any company, you can look at the documentation, analyze it, raise queries. And in some cases, it could be that, as a result of you raising a query, the documentation might change, and that will be beneficial for the whole class. So if you notice anything that is wrong, remember you're all part of the same company, so you have to make an effort to fix it, and that will make it beneficial to everybody. So let's say when we do the student evaluation, is it? Yeah. So at the end, the evaluation, the top complaint is the specs were not clear. So that's like, and I think people always think about workshops as being an assignment where you have, a spec and you have to do the spec. And if you haven't done it, it's the fault of the spec. But again, I say these specs have been done in the same way as companies do them. People do them in a rush. People, they're under pressure. Things change. They don't realize they've changed one bit, another bit hasn't changed, and so on. So the same happens to us. We've done some specs. Maybe we forgot a few things. Maybe there are some errors. But this process of analyzing specs is really important part of a software engineering person. You analyze the business, you raise issues, you ask during mentoring, and then we will update. So again, I'm emphasizing that anything we give you, we've been working, I think, throughout the whole summer just to produce all the documentation for this course, because we believe it's a good thing for you to work on a different problem from last year. And again, I think it will be an exciting new problem to work on. And at the same time, we wanted to contribute to make it even more exciting, more interesting for the future generations of students. And we are very fortunate that as soon I've said that the specification of this came from industry. Industry said, you know, you're only doing these story programs. Why don't you do things that are real life? And then we said, what is real life? We said, oh, we all use AWS, we all use GitHub. So we said, okay, let's talk to these entities and ask them to give us information, give us resources. And we're fortunate for this course, Atlassian has given us a server for you to do your communication, Jira, project management. GitHub also has given us accounts and ways to help us do the DevOps. AWS gave us guest lectures and so on. So we are fortunate that as soon as we said we want to teach this, we got all these companies that helped us, and they have been providing us with a lot of help, and I wish to acknowledge their help, plus companies like Optiva, who are also sponsoring the prize. So what you need, very important, is to register and form the teams, and then you need to organize yourselves as teams and start working as soon as possible. And what I always ask teams to do is don't wait for the first mentoring session. Talk to each other. Talk to each other before, meet, organize, define roles. Because you are third year, you know an agile team. You need project manager, you need a repository, you need this, you need that. So you can sort all these things before you can organize your schedule of meetings, and you can save time before the course starts. And all the specs, all the slides, everything is out there. So there's nothing that can stop you doing that. So I finished talking just about the general setup of the course. And I'm going to talk now about this application that you're going to be involved in, but maybe pausing in case somebody has questions. Anybody? Is the course objectives clear to everyone? Okay, so let's move on. And